We've talked a lot about the importance of decisions that governing bodies make as being both credible and legitimate. And we see that we were challenged through COVID to ensure that those decisions that we make as a board are truly credible and legitimate. Now, first, what do we mean by credible and legitimate? Credible is really that we're making decisions that aren't just made by one individual, but they're made by the group. And when we say legitimate, that we've got the right voices involved in the decision so that when we come out with the decision, we know that those are better decisions than we went into this conversation. And we really believe that Housebase and what we can do with Housebase can really help us as a board make those decisions more credible and legitimate because it allows for the opportunity to get more members engaged in the conversation. So we can really ask ourselves that question when we think about the decisions we're making, who needs to be involved in that decision making? And because of limitations in who can sit at the table, and because of limitations we used to have about flying people in, we had limitations in who could be at the table and who could be part of those decisions. But now, with the ability to be both interactive virtually and face to face, we have the opportunity to bring more voices in. We also have the opportunity to build consensus around those voices. And the wonderful thing about Housebase and the ability to use virtual interaction and virtual platforms, it gives us the opportunity to really consolidate our ideas and build consensus around those ideas. There's some really cool tools that allow for a little bit of artificial intelligence involved in consolidating our ideas. It also allows us to take polls in a more efficient and effective and creative way than we're typically used to with Zoom. But we do believe that using Housebase creates what we call more credible and legitimate decision making.
So, Paul, why don't you talk to me a little bit about how committees in particular can use this process, this tool, Housebase?
Yeah, it's a really good question because as we know, we've been already sort of evolving into using virtual committee meetings. That's something that associations have been doing for years. And the question has always been, how successful really has it been? You know, do we truly have the interaction that we're looking for? Do we have the engagement that we're looking for? Do we have the right representation that we're looking for in those conversations of committees? So we see that Housebase, you know, creates the opportunity to bring in additional voices into that conversation that committee should be having. It also allows the committee to build on the work that the committee does. And it gives the staff an opportunity to see what the committee has come up with and then take the information of the committee and begin to consolidate it. So we see it as a really nice interactive tool that will enhance the committee experience, both for the volunteers that are engaged, as well as the staff that have to support that committee.
So, Paul, that's fantastic to hear about committees and how they can use it. But you know, there are all different types of groups and volunteer leaders. How can people use this for, say, the House of Delegates?
Oh, wow, good question. I mean, we all have been struggling for years about what to do with our House of Delegates. Now, for those of you that don't know what a House of Delegates is, it's typically a larger group, say 200 people of the membership that come together to represent the members in a more specific way than, say, for example, a board does. And they potentially use that experience, that opportunity to engage in and to make decisions on behalf of the association. Whether it's for the association or for the profession or industry, it's typically a large group of people who come together to help solve big problems for the industry or the association. Now, saying all that, they've gotten out of hand. They've gotten expensive, and they've gotten sort of traditional in their approach to engagement. Now, let's take a step back first and say that whenever we recommend changes, for example, to a House of Delegates, we're not recommending that we get less members involved in decision making, because as a general rule, associations, by their very nature, engage the community in activities and decisions. So therefore, the House of Delegates is a very important opportunity to engage the members in decisions. And in fact, with Housebase, it creates even more of an opportunity to get more members engaged. So therefore, you're expanding your engagement of your members rather than potentially contracting it. And it does this in a way that both is more effective in terms of engagement, because it gives you more options of how those members can get engaged, but it also is more cost effective. You're not flying in all these individuals and having to pay for that to get them to engage, because we have made that shift in a lot of organizations we know. During COVID and during the last pandemic, the last year, they transformed their House of Delegates that used to meet face to face to a virtual environment. Now, we also know that that didn't go so well, that it really wasn't a positive experience for the members. And it really didn't create the kind of decision making that we've typically seen in face to face. So therefore, we see Housebase as a way to create a much broader, better experience for the members, get more engaged, members engaged in the decision making. So it feels more like the face to face without having the added expense and travel costs that we've traditionally had.
So messages, Paul, for the people who participated. What do you have to say to those people who have participated in this experience? And well, I mean, let's just leave it at that. What do you have to say?
Yes, first, so I was really overwhelmed by the number of people that did participate and how often they participated in the experiment that we used Housebase to identify and discuss a critical issue for associations today. And I was really impressed when I got in the breakout session with the level of participation. Now, as we all know, we've all been doing virtual breakout sessions through Zoom all through COVID, and we've gotten fairly good at it, pretty much. And it's not like we're starting from zero, but what I saw in the breakout, because of the more interactive chat discussion that was going on, it was just much more fulfilling, and it seemed to be more energized. So what I see in Housebase is kind of the opportunity to take out those breakout sessions that we're all using on Zoom to the next level, because you've got some additional tools you can use. The tools are a little bit easier to use. Now, because of the number of tools, it can be a little bit overwhelming, but I remember saying the same thing when I started working with Zoom at the beginning of COVID, how overwhelming it was. But it was interesting to watch the transition. And I believe that as we get used to using these tools more and more, they will become less overwhelming. So really impressed with the amount of interaction that took place, different than what I had seen before, and also the opportunity to both comment through communication, verbal communication, as well as through chat communication. It was almost seamless to me. What people were saying in the chat was seamless to what they were saying verbally.
If you just had one final thought to share with people who are thinking about doing something like this in the future, what would that be?
So my final thought to really think about the future is, we all hope that at some point we're going to go back to face-to-face meetings. And everybody's talking about that. Everybody's talking about, let's go back to face-to-face meetings. But the reality is that we're not going to necessarily go back like it used to be. We hope to have face-to-face meetings, and yes, we will. I hope to be part of face-to-face meetings because I love being with people and I enjoy the experience. However, we know that that's not going to be the case, because we learned that through a hybrid approach to both having a virtual experience as well as a face-to-face experience, that there's greater opportunity for interaction, there's greater opportunity for involvement, and potentially there's an opportunity to save some money. So I see that as we think about the future, and as these platforms get more and more sophisticated, and especially Housebase and what it offers, I see the advantage of really making these experiences much more robust, much more interactive, and much more participatory going forward.
So they should be brave and do it.
They should be brave and do it. So go ahead, jump in, even though it may seem overwhelming, and just go ahead and do it and try it.
Awesome.